Yeah, we are. You know, dirty.
All right, hold Yeah. I've got a favor. Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't have. No. All right. Thank you. I know you can't say no. I know. I don't think it's out. Do we have more? Yeah. Do we have more videos? No. Our friends. There are much more chairs. You got big chairs in the back. The other rest. Okay. Yeah, no, there's. We go. I'll tell you what's like. No, I know. Sorry. Everything going? Yeah.
I know you may be. No pressure. Yeah, thank you. Try.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order between the Boston Teachers Association and the Boston School Committee. I believe third bargaining session. Well,
Second.
I was in second bargaining session. Yep. I'd like to welcome everybody, and maybe if we could just quickly go around the table and introduce ourselves.
Hi, Carrie Donahue, 10th grade at Plum Cove School.
Rich Francis, VHS.
Hi, Rachel Rex, Science at Gloucester High School and GTA President.
Matthew Lewis, Amelia Middle School, GTA Vice President. Dan Graham, Amelia Social.
Carlisi, MTA field representative.
Clarity, East Veterans, 5th grade.
Emily Conley, Visual Arts, Gloucester High School.
Our first 5th grade, West Ham.
Greg Peggy, counselor.
We sit on the school committee and parent.
Kathy Clancy, School Committee Chair.
Bill Melvin, School Committee Vice Chair. And welcome everybody out there and everybody that's watching on Zoom. as you know, or you can probably see, we're missing Superintendent Lummis tonight, and so I just wanted to kind of make a general statement of, as you know, this agreement that we come to a resolution on between the GTA and the school committee. We're here and we're certainly capable of talking and negotiating without Superintendent Lummis present. He's got a lot going on with the budget. We have a big meeting tomorrow night, so having said that, we're looking for some clarifications.
So before, just really quickly to housekeeping, on this, if that's okay. So number one, we need the library, if you guys are able to meet and talk to them before, so we can get this all set up. We'll start right at 4:30. We're a couple minutes late into it. And yes, we started a few minutes ago, but we really, if that's possible, we can going forward. And then when we go to caucus, we've had some feedback from members that having the computer and the camera still set up doesn't make them feel like they're always, well, I put it this way, we've had hot mic issues with some people in the past, and we don't want that to happen again.
Have you had hot mic issues with this?
First session, yep,
For just a brief moment, but.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
You just take the computer with you
yeah,
and bring it back.
Maria?
is that possible?
I don't know.
I think you can just unplug the connection.
I stop the Zoom?
When you pause the
Take it
Zoom,
with you.
just unplug from the smart board and take the computer with you. You'd still be logged in. You'd still be.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll try it.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll find out.
Right.
Plugging it back in.
Appreciate that.
Fine on that. I think with regards to the use of the library, we'll take that under advisement and discuss it. So we meet here. I've been here most nights for the last 2 weeks, and so it kind of feels like home, so, but let us discuss that a little better.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Having said that, we're looking for some clarification, especially on proposal number 3, which involves and is centered around FMLA. It's a complicated proposal. At least for us, it's complicated. There's a lot of acronyms involved. And potentially impact staff, families, budget, paid time off, existing federal and state law, as well as city policy and staffing in our schools. So really looking for some clarification. We'll probably ask some questions to try and get some clarification on that tonight, or get some feedback on that, and then kind of go from there.
Do you mind? I mean, I read through, first of all, sorry, I missed our first section, thanks everyone. I read through it. I have questions. I know the committee, I think they're basically the same questions. Mind if we just jump in with those, or?
Yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense if you give us your questions. There might be stuff we want to confer before we give an answer to, but.
Totally fine. They're kind of like some are broad-based questions, some are a little more granular, depending on where we are within the FMLA proposal. So if I could just, try to rather head on and speak. So as Bill had said, and I think this gets everybody, part of the confusion tends to be, I have found, in having a discussion about FMLA or any of the benefits that FMLA touches, is the various acronyms of the statutes that apply. FMLA, and we know it's what we act. MMLA, right, the Mass Maternity Leave Act. And then PFML, which I think confuses a ton of people. I'm not suggesting here, but I think those 3 things can be confusing, especially in terms of like how they interact. The PFML, I think, is confusing for a lot of folks because that's operates differently than FMLA and MMLA in the sense that former 2 automatically apply, but PFML does not for a municipality. And if and when it does, right, there's a whole kind of system there where you'd have to, 1, have it be accepted, but then 2, members would have to sort of pay into it. So I know that sounded a lot, and I didn't mean to like sound preachy, but it's sort of setting up the question, which is when you look at the sort of concept, I think in the FMLA language, it looks like 1, that you're looking to kind of delete some of the FMLA language, i.e. requirements. So for example, under FMLA to qualify, you would be like 1,250 hours and other things, right? Blah, blah, blah. And it looks like in the proposal, you're proposing to get rid of that, but then I think add in. And here's where I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to suggest something that may not be the case. But add in like PFML type benefits. So kind of like the broad question, and I apologize for sort of preamble, is sort of like, if you could walk through kind of what it is you're trying to do there, right? Like that's why it would help sort of clarify for us kind of like what is the concept here, what are you trying to do, how are you trying to make that framework work? So does that make sense, hopefully?
Yeah,
Okay.
so generally, what we're trying to do is separate FMLA from other sick leave, parental leave benefits. FMLA is a federal minimum, 12 weeks unpaid leave, intermittent or continuous to protect your job if that leave becomes necessary. We think that that's the safety net the federal government mandates that comes after the exhaustion of contractually negotiated benefits and should not run concurrently. So that a member who has a serious illness or injury or takes parental leave under the CBA, that under the terms we negotiate, that does not count as part of their 12 weeks of FMLA as the current practice and language dictates it should be. So FMLA, if I've got 183 sick days and I need to miss a whole school year and cash in all my sick days in order to recover from my illness or injury, then after those 183 days are exhausted, I get 12 more weeks of unpaid leave under FMLA. That would
That's
protect my
what
job.
you're proposing.
That's what I'm proposing.
Right, not suggesting how it works.
That's what the proposal is.
And I also wanted to make sure it's very clear, we're not asking the employer to opt into the state.
It wasn't to me, I was trying, yeah, I get that, thank you.
Yeah.
It wasn't trying to suggest that. I was trying to talk about that because I think it gets confusing and I think some folks don't know necessarily how that works, so, yeah. Okay, so as I understand what you're saying, it's the idea would be that you would like the committee to agree to certain benefits that would come first before FMLA benefits kick in. That's sort of like concept one, right?
Yes.
Okay. But then it also looks like you have in here language that cuts out the requirements of FMLA. So in other words, FMLA, as you said, like federal law, it is what it is. But to the extent that there are requirements that you have to meet in order to qualify for FMLA, we can't negotiate those away, right? You can't say, so using the 1250 hours thing, right? Like you would need to have 40 hours to qualify for FMLA. We can't put it in the contract that it's 1240, right?
Well,
Obviously,
so we can negotiate though that FMLA like benefits are available to members at a different standard, right? It's sometimes what we do with paraeducator units. The teacher unit under FMLA is already exempt from the 1250 requirement because they're teachers. It may not add up, but the intrinsic nature of their job that requires them to work beyond the contract hours for grading and other reasons are why they already qualify even without this sort of language.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you want these benefits before the FMLA kicks in.
Right.
Okay.
So that if I need sick time, if an employee needs sick time for themselves, and they've exhausted family illness at the level we have or the level we negotiate going forward, that FMLA becomes the unpaid federal mandated safety net after they've exhausted their contractual benefits.
But so FMLA allows, as is the case now, right? An employee to use their sick days, i.e. that paid for it. So they would be paid for leave if they opted, if it was FMLA applicable.
Right. Well, the problem is the current language requires that they exhaust sick leave before going on unpaid leave, which makes those timelines concurrent. We're proposing separating them so that the FMLA unpaid portion comes after they've exhausted all their sick leave, if the member so chooses. But it becomes the member's discretion if, when they take their extended, their leave for medical reasons or for family illness, if they wish to use their sick time, they can. Under current language, they're required to. And so we would make that the member's discretion, it's their contractual benefit, it's part of their compensation. So the proposal is sick time benefit is for the member to decide whether this is a sick time benefit situation or whether this is an FMLA unpaid leave and or whether or not to use time to cover that.
So I'm just gonna,
Thank you.
yeah, so I just want to jump in because I feel like there's two different things happening. So one, which I think you guys have explained really well, is that there's a benefit that you want different benefits to be for FMLA. I think I get that. I guess for me, what I'm confused about, and I just would love some clarification, is once we're in the realm of the FMLA, so a federal, like, what Greg was saying, like, I know that there are differences for teachers and for education staffers, because the number of hours isn't the same, and I don't know the precise numbers that are there. But they were quite, like, in the way this appendix is written and then altered, I mean, the appendix was written based on the FMLA law. So the alterations are to the FMLA law.
So-
So that's what's a little bit confusing.
So I agree, and I think that's part of why. This is our opening proposal to try to get to, you know, as a means to an end. But I think part of the way the current language is problematic is it wants to, it seems like somebody, they want the cake and eat it too situations. It references FMLA, but it's contract language. If it's just FMLA, why do we have an appendix that goes through all of these certain
I have the same.
caveats?
I have
So.
the same question.
So and that's part of the same, you know, the similar way we wrote the proposal on parental leave was in that situation, we said, let's just delete the existing appendix and replace it with something that makes sense. Here, we'll admit, we were trying to make it as easy to understand as possible without throwing everything out and just making it one sentence, because there is the notification and the distribution of policy stuff here that I believe would be important for management to keep. So we didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But in terms of what is the objective of the proposal, it is to, sorry, I guess, it is to separate FMLA as the safety net where the member has the choice whether they're going to be using FMLA time during their personal or family.
Right, to separate that from the other.
Right.
So it's not really, just please correct me if I'm wrong. It's not really changing FMLA because we can't, it's just separating it.
Right.
Correct, from the other, okay. That helps me, but. Because it was confusing.
That is, it's definitely helpful. I mean, at least sort of wrapping my head around sort of how this would work.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more like more granular questions. So on, like, for example, eligibility 1A. Full school year defined as having fewer than 90 days without pay in the work year. So like, what's can you walk through sort of like 89 days would obviously not work, right?
So it's rather than say half a school year and then does that include leaves? Does that include sick time? Does that include, you know, all of these sort of reasons that might be counted against your time in, including your 1250 hours? If the member was paid through sick leave, through parental leave, whatever their benefits were for at least 90 days, then that would count as having worked that full year. So being on sick leave would not count against you as far as qualifying for the benefits in this section. Or any other kind of leave, unless you were more than half the year out.
So, but the FMLA has a requirement that it's for full, you know, the eligibility is for a full year, obviously with teachers being, you know, in a different category that is also, and you want it to be 90 days.
As long as they were paid for 90 out of the 180 school days, then they should have access to these benefits and they should be exclusive of FMLA leave. FMLA leave has its own requirements that are outside of this. What we're trying to do is negotiate better than the minimum the law requires.
But if they haven't met the threshold of.
We're asking you to lower the threshold so that they can access these benefits, even though they may not have shown up to be in the building 1,250 hours. That if they're a paid employee for half the year or
I
more.
understand.
Okay.
Can I just ask one?
Yeah.
One more
Yeah,
clarifying
yeah.
question, just as I read the language, an employee employed by the Gloucester Public Schools. So if you're on sick leave,
You're
you're still
eligible.
employed,
Yeah.
so then. Yeah, so that's why, so I'm not sure why, I guess that's why I'm wondering about the change, because if you're employed. So sick leave doesn't change if you're employed, right? None of those leaves change your employment status with.
But they do count against your 1,250 hours. And that's the part we're
I see.
asking the committee to consider a better threshold.
So the clock stops ticking if you're on sick leave, is that what you're saying?
No, you are still considered an active employee. If you're receiving pay for that school.
Okay.
So I'm trying to locate it, but another question that I had was, in your, you struck the medical certification part of what is in the FMLA, meaning, and I can try to find it out, trying to look at it, but I don't know it. So having to look at FMLA, which is like over 5 days, you can get a medical certification, was it oh yeah, through, thank you, D3, yeah. So that's an ability, right, by the employer to understand how long the leave is gonna be, the medical necessity for the leave, plan. So like for there, what's the kind of rationale for taking that out?
I think it's redundant because the sick leave article already has a provision allowing for the employer to ask for proof after a certain number of days,
No, proof period.
for any number of days.
Right.
So that's
That's in sick leave, which I wanna say is Article 7, even off the top of my head. Dennis, look at that.
So you're saying, Rachel, if this is all sick leave, under the sick leave provision, the employer.
It's already in
Yeah, but is it
That can ask for proof under,
anytime?
Yeah.
It's, you know.
I believe if you, can somebody?
Yeah.
pull it up?
And it's for medical certification as well.
I'd have to look at it.
It says section C, the superintendent may demand proof under any section of this article.
I'm sorry, I can't do something on it.
It's,
Superintendent may demand proof under any section of this article. It's section C, it's page 22.
Okay.
Yep.
Not arguing, but that is a little different than medical certification, right? In terms
But
of
you
like
can
the
ask-
specific language, right? So,
But it still gives him the right to ask.
right, all I'm saying is that the FMLA language is really specific. And this is a little bit more nebulous, I
So,
think, in terms of like.
again, I wanna- Go back to that, FMLA won't change, so when a member has exhausted all of their contractual leave. We don't, under FMLA, which would still be taking over at that point, those medical certifications become
Yeah,
required by law.
I understand that. I'm just thinking in this model, right? There is no FMLA-like mechanism for asking for like a medical certificate. And this is based on the assumption that, you know, my interpretation of that language being a little different, but not as specific as the FMLA language for a medical certificate. And my question was really, you know, why not? Because that's part of the law. There's good
Yeah.
reason for that. You know, why wouldn't we have that? That's so. It's okay. I mean, and then so another sort of like curiosity I have or question is along the same line. Well, how would it work for notice coming back to work, et cetera? Because the district obviously has a number of operational needs for filling the position, substitute at that post. You know, the staffing part of it, when it's there's all sorts of logistical questions there, cost considerations that go along with this. So how do you see that work?
So if you go to page 5 of the March 26 proposals, and actually this also addresses earlier, part of the notice has some timelines already in there. It has the providing of certification in there.
This is all new language?
No, this is the existing.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought you were saying.
No, so that's where it's.
Okay.
It's already sort of redundant to the strike through on the earlier topic. And then to that question about what's in
But actually, yeah,
timeline.
and letter C above D requires that certification. In the healthcare provider, so we weren't striking it to never have it, but striking it because it was redundant. Actually,
So if they've already qualified under procedure C on page 5,
it requires
the D addendum, again, is trying to maintain what we think the management would like to keep. So that's why we inserted the use of paid sick leave shall be at the employee's discretion without requiring the exhaustion of personal, we don't have vacation time. And then just updating based on the other parts of the.
Can I ask one question? So what you're suggesting is all the language that you proposed, an employee can take at the time that they need, and then FMLA kicks in after that, and then they would have the option not to use FMLA and not use the sick time.
So if they can't return after they've exhausted all their sick time, they can go on FMLA as unpaid for those 12 weeks. And at that point, they've exhausted everything that's available under the law and under the contract, but they're back to back and not concurrent. So if someone's out, has 12 weeks of, they have say they only have 60 sick days, they take 12 weeks out, use all 60 sick days, but still need more time, then they can go on FMLA and take that time
You're saying
unpaid.
they can't, but they don't have to.
Well, if they wanted to, if they were gonna take a medical disability, like retirement, you know, I can't speak for every possible situation, but they could. That 12 weeks would be after they've used their sick time, another 12 weeks of unpaid. And then at that point, that's everything that's available, but not, if you have 60 sick days and you take 12 weeks of FMLA leave, now you've got nothing left. There's your, you know, you've exhausted everything in one shot versus back to back. Versus the contractual.
Like, and your plan, we could opt out of FMLA. They could decide they don't want to.
So the member could choose if they would rather take, especially, this is most probably relevant with intermittent FMLA, where somebody might need a week here or a week there, or for whatever reason. And they decide they want to use their sick time so that they don't lose pay for that. That would be their choice. Or they can say, I would rather use I'd rather not use my sick time, take my FMLA to take care of my brother or my father or whoever, and then save my sick days in case I get sick. Because maybe right now, the employee has the ability to take that time unpaid. And so they shouldn't be forced to use their sick time if they'd rather bank it for their personal use later on in their career. Or vice versa, now's the time when if I'm gonna take family medical leave under the law for an immediate family member, and I need to take that time off and I can't afford to do that without pay, I have the option, which is what the law says, to use sick time. But the law says it's an option. What's become a practice and what the language is established is that
The law says what's on.
whether or not to use sick time to cover for FMLA. The law doesn't require it to be
It's the
concurrent.
employer's
It's an
prerogative.
employee.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
an employee.
Well, in this case, we have language that makes it
I
required,
get that, I'm just saying FMLA, that's the way FMLA works there.
but it's not an employer's prerogative unless a past practice developed in some place where they don't have language. It's not in the law that they just get, the employer just gets to decide for the
I
employee.
think it is.
And we'll disagree on that for now,
Yeah.
table that one. But I'm pretty sure it's become a past practice, but they're intended not to necessarily be at the employer's discretion, it's the employee's benefit.
Isn't the FMLA, I'm looking at them, not you, because I'm also, this is my understanding, that the FMLA that we have in practice here in Gloucester is a citywide, and the city policy is that, it's a federal law. It's a federal law, but the city policy is that you have to take your sick time first. So we're in city policies now, which are not school department policies.
But that still doesn't change our ability to negotiate something that's better than or different than the city policy. The
Well-
contract supersedes.
You're saying two different things, I think.
Okay.
Because I think I think it's coming back to is something in lieu of I would before FMLA,
Right,
which is, and then what you said is certainly true too,
Right.
that's for the city policy.
Okay,
right? Like this stuff.
okay.
Okay. I have, personally speaking, I need to read through that with fresh eyes, with what you guys just said, it was helpful.
Yeah, and if with hearing, what the union's goal is and sort of what we're hoping to achieve, obviously we entertain any counter, whether working with this language, or whether you've got a sort of another way on your own to scrap it and counter with something that would be easier for all of us to understand going forward. But that's our goal, is FMLA is the federal minimum safety net that should come after everything that's negotiated.
So stated simply, you want protection for 24 weeks.
12 weeks after all exhausted, at the employee's discretion.
12 weeks of FMLA after the employees exhausted all their.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Right, but that's not necessarily 24 weeks.
Not how
Your teacher only accrues,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
10 days per
Yeah.
year, so that could be quite less.
12 weeks after whatever's exhausted.
Well, control week is FMLA.
Yeah,
That's-
12 weeks of
For me.
FMLA, right.
I gotta get through the rest of the school year. Once the way through that.
Yeah, so my other question, which was not FMLA related, it was on the parental leave. So this is on F4, which I found, especially speaking to that particular paragraph. Where it's at the bottom of page 8, we
Yep.
kind of, and I know I'm kind of catching you, I didn't have a chance to read it, but.
So when somebody is returning from leave, right, if they've been on the extended leave after the 12 weeks, right, this is an unpaid extended leave of absence. When they return, the proposal is that they go back to the job that they left. All right, now, because it's an extended leave, the difference between the regular 12-week parental leave is they come back to the job they left. After the 12 weeks, if they take extended leave, they come back to the job they left if it's available or to an equivalent position. But if while they were out, there's been a reduction in force, then that position may not be available to them to come back to, because now they're on an extended unpaid leave of absence. So, and I agree, it's a bit wordy. We've been workshopping this for a while. But that was sort of what we were trying to capture is, right, if you've done a reduction in force and someone's on an unpaid extended leave after those employer paid 12 weeks, that's up to a year, then that's they may be taking a risk if there are layoffs while they're out, that the job that left is not, there's the job left for them.
So, thank you. That's helpful. One other clause that are just part of that that kind of is, an actual decrease in the number of pupils in the schools in the city render such action inadvisable. Is that read with the other parts of that paragraph separately from? How does that work?
So it's meant to mirror what the law says about reduction in
Yes.
force and
Okay.
professional status versus non-professional status and.
So that's sort of a broad stroke takeaway, is that you're trying to mirror the language from.
Yeah, for that, in that situation, that's sort of the same reduction in force pecking order would apply.
Guys have other questions? Yeah.
No. It's just a lot of accidents. No, I think that's. Those are the main questions.
We need to have a bunch more discussion on those.
Yeah.
Sure, yes, sure. But thank you.
Do you have any other questions about any of the other proposals from last time or?
So the other part of it was just that it looks like there's a whole number of things that are tied to money. And so we'd like to see kind of what we're dealing with in terms of a large economic proposal and be able to respond to those items.
Yeah.
So like last time, I think it was really helpful. If we can hold all questions to the end. That way we can present them, and where I can, I may provide some elucidation, but most of this is pretty straightforward. So not just in Gloucester, but all over the state, school districts are struggling with how to deal with student dysregulation, how to provide the supports that staff and students need in those situations to prevent them from occurring in the first place, and then to make sure that students have what they need and teachers have what they need. So for under the current staff and student safety article, Article 24, we would propose adding in some new sections. Section C, emotional distress in the classroom. The committee and the association recognize employees' rights to a safe working environment which is free from threats and violence. It is further recognized that it is the employer's obligation to provide a safe learning environment for all students and safe working environment for all educators and staff. There is increasing and alarmingly more student emotional distress in the classrooms. These episodes of dysregulation may take many forms, including verbal and physical outbursts. Sometimes these episodes cause classroom evacuations and have a significant impact on student learning. The parties believe they must act together with family stakeholders to address these problems. As such, the employer agrees to do the following. 1, meet with members delegated by the association biannually and as necessary, as determined by members of the district and the association. The purpose of these meetings will be to review policies and procedures with the Gloucester School Committee to ensure students are receiving the correct and needed supports, review operational procedures to ensure student discipline codes are fair and enforced, develop mutually agreed upon district-wide staff reporting system and protocols regarding classroom safety issues, including but not limited to a clearly delineated system for documenting all instances of verbal, emotional, and or physical abuse toward other students or school staff, a clearly delineated system for tracking offenses, interventions, and consequences of each offense on an ongoing basis, a clearly delineated system for providing feedback to and follow-up from administration for each of these offenses, interventions, and consequences of each offense. Feedback from administration will be communicated to all staff members who work with each student involved in the incident, 1 school day of the incident's occurrence. Clearly delineated district-wide protocols to be implemented for each student who has been removed from the classroom for verbal, emotional, or physical abuse toward other students and or staff upon the student's return. The initial meeting regarding the subject will be scheduled and occur no later than 1 month following ratification of this agreement. In subsequent years, the first meeting will occur no later than September 15th and the second no later than February 15th. If the district or association determines that any additional meetings are needed, the request may be given in writing by either party, and a response from the responding party will be required within 5 business days. All members shall be compensated at the hourly rate per meeting on this team. So the goal is not to prescribe the solution here at the table, but to work with the committee and the superintendent, the administration, to come up with a clear system that all know, understand, and are able to use for the betterment of all students. And so some of these exist in pieces, piecemeal, there's differences between schools, and that creates a lot of confusion in the buildings. So that's why we want a district-wide protocol that everybody understands. Number 2, provide annual training to all educators regarding the use and purpose of staff reporting functions. The training for new hires will occur during new employee training. Training for all returning employees will occur prior to the first scheduled day of school for students. And staff hired at any point of the year after the new employee training has occurred will be trained prior to their first scheduled day of work. Number 3, prior to ongoing training and professional development, including provide, oh, sorry, thank you. For the record, I'm wearing the mask today. There's a bug going around my house. I've been feeling fine, but I didn't want to take any chances. So might be a little bit of that going on with that. Provide ongoing training and professional development, including training on behavior management to all staff who work with students who are struggling with social emotional regulation. All staff includes, but is not limited to, general and special education teachers, specialists, related service providers, counselors, support staff, and education support personnel who work directly with students. Number 4, provide all staff who are assigned to implement IEPs and or 504 plans with access to such plans and training on how to access and interact with such plans to the full extent allowable by law. And number 5, provide all staff who are assigned to work with students with behavior plans with access to such plans to the full extent allowable by law. So I know there may be some things that some staff don't need to know, but communication with the people who are working with the students is really, really important because, you know, you don't always know Johnny had a hard time this morning when he comes to your class, you know, and the lunch monitor and the cafeteria workers could really use that kind of information. Don't need to know what happened, but hey, you know, there was something going on, especially people who are supervising students after an incident. Section D, student support, again, helping to address and prevent these issues. The employer will provide fully staffed therapy rooms or other forms of in-school support when students are having emotional distress in all school buildings. Fully staffed shall mean that there is a qualified educator available at all times to service students in need without any educator covered by this agreement being required to forego their regularly assigned duties. So we have a situation sometimes where there's a person who could be or should be helping a student in distress, but the way their schedule is, they don't have the ability to be in 2 places at once. Dan can certainly speak to that a little bit more specifically as a social worker.
Well, I can give you an example. Yesterday, a classroom was evacuated for safety care, which is our trained staff going in to help de-escalate and the defense needed their trained staff to manage that. I had students set up to come meet with me, but instead my time was spent with the kids who were removed from the classroom. Turns out I can fit 7 kids into my single office. But it was me being with those kids who had cognitive issues, trying to allay their distress at the situation, because I was there. But then I couldn't do my IEP mandated duties, which were to go see my kids for counseling, because I was supporting those other students. It's just, we get walkie-talkies, we get calls in a lot for things that we can't manage. If I'm in an IEP meeting, I can't come to a distressed student. We need a space for kids to go where somebody can help regulate and not alleviate the situation, but at least regulate the kids so that the risk of sending a kid out in an ambulance who is unable to regulate decreases. And we know that students who struggle to regulate, if they don't have a space to go, then they disrupt the learning of others, become a problem. Those are some of the kids that we're seeing out of district. And if you look at those out of district placements, they have a lot of spaces that are staffed. So my thought is that if we can do that here, that's saving us from that out of district challenge that I know we're all trying to figure out. But that is one area we need to solve that, because that's what those schools are.
Second, each elementary student support classroom shall be assigned no fewer than 2 qualified educators, part of this, to help with that same issue.
Can I speak to that one?
Yes, please.
Just for one example, we had one of those classrooms, veterans had one, we merged, we're down to 1. But now we have more students with need. So it's a huge distress for the school. The person in that room has, her caseload is far too big for her to really give the children what they need and for the teachers to be able to teach appropriately. So we really need, number 2, we need staff in those support rooms, not just one teacher, we need staff. We actually, in these veterans, we need more than 1 of these rooms.
Third, on a monthly basis, building management shall report on student discipline, conduct, referral, and outcome trends to the union. Again, that can be, you know, at a staff meeting, there were this many referrals, we give this number of this type of correction or accountability measure or discipline. And that again is so that everybody in each building, you know, knows how things are going. And it's becomes part of the routine in helping to manage the building and the students' learning environment. Number 4, within 2 days, building management will respond in writing to unit members who make student discipline and conduct referrals. Number 5, upon request to the union not to exceed once per year, the Gloucester School Committee or a member designated as a liaison shall meet with members of the union to hear educator feedback and trends regarding educational policy matters that are in the purview of the committee. So, and once we get these things up and running, we'd like to keep an open dialogue with you, the school committee, so that you know how these things are working, how students are faring in our schools, how staff are doing under these new policies and procedures to help our students.
Really keep a healthy connection.
So that brings us to special education topics, number 6. In the event a special education employee or other related service provider misses a preparation period or lunch because of staffing shortages or workload demands, that employee shall have that time made up before the end of the work week. And 2, the employer shall build a schedule for special education teachers and related service providers that includes designated and built-in time for student testing, IEP meetings, progress meetings, and administrative meetings scheduled by central office. And so if we do well enough with number 2, number 1 shouldn't occur. So maybe they could be reversed in order, but that is the thinking there. You know, what happens with a lot of these people, the special education and related service providers, is they care so much about their students, they drop everything for them at the expense of their own ability to take care of themselves during the day. And so if that happens due to a crisis, due to a student who is in need of support, no person in that role is going to refuse doing what their students need. But there should be some recognition in the contract to make up that time and appreciation for that commitment.
I think the built-in time is key.
And number 2, yeah.
Because they can need to test, and that takes away from their servicing the students. Because there's no built-in time to test, but they need to test. So it's being taken away from something else that they do and they're needed for. Does that make sense?
And then during student diagnostic testing busy periods, the employer shall provide substitute coverage for service grid requirements so that employees can complete testing. So that's not a daily ongoing thing, but you know, there are the busy seasons when obviously MCAS is the most well-known. But you know, there are times in every student's IEP during the review process. And sometimes the caseloads are such that it seems like everybody in the school is on that same timeline. So if there's iReady testing that's happening, or EA testing, elbow test, all those sort of testing prep things that we do or assessments we do to see if we're successful. They measure that, if not, is another issue with me, but that's the idea behind it.
And it all looks service related.
That's on the IEP. A service grid is literally a grid that says student needs 6 times 30 of
Okay.
remediation. Who's delivering it? What's the next thing?
This also sometimes happens when you have one special ed teacher who's out on medical leave or for whatever reason. Or has left the district and we haven't hired anyone. And then all of the burden of all the testing of both sets of kids falls on one teacher. So that becomes a lot for one teacher.
Number 7, class size and caseloads. So we propose striping the aspirational language and implementing real class size limits. So we would propose that the class sizes shall not exceed 25 pupils per teacher in all classes, exclusive of study halls and lectures. We would propose that only music ensembles are exempt from this maximum. If you are a music teacher, general music specialist at the elementary, middle, or high school level, and it's not the chorus, the band, the ensemble group, that's still a class and should have the same maximum as other classes. And then striking the different ratio for physical education, that should also similarly have the same limit. If you've ever spoken to a phys ed teacher at any grade level and they've got 40 students in a room, it's absolutely taxing and it's impossible. Yes. So we propose the same limit there. And then special education class sizes will be no greater than allowed by law, so setting up a firm limit there. And then, again, to the caseload of the related service providers, the sub-separate classrooms, we would propose that partial inclusion classrooms have a maximum of 10 students in a class. Sub-separate classrooms, class sizes shall be determined based on the needs of the students and what creates the safest environment for educators and students. Related service providers shall have a caseload of no more than 15 students for whom they are directly responsible. Section B, we would propose striking entirely. We've come to an agreement on class sizes, and the district is in violation. We should have the right to file grievances and arbitration if there's implementation or interpretation of language. And we would propose inserting, and this is to incentivize the employer to meet these class sizes while also giving you the managerial discretion to exceed them. Right? It's not meant to be punitive, but it is meant to make to help the employer consider the opportunity cost and the cost benefit analysis of doubling up or overloading certain classes, certain related service providers. So we would propose that, we do propose that any bargaining unit employee assigned more units than the above maximums, the employer shall compensate that educator $20 per day per student above the class ratios. For any inclusion class or classroom with greater than 40% of the students on an IEP or 504 or designated as English language learners, that class shall be a dedicated co-taught class with a special education teacher or teacher of English as a second language ESL. And number 8, professional learning communities. For the high school, try to work within what's currently happening, memorialize them, and obviously make some improvements based on feedback from educators at each level. So for the high school, we want to propose that the preparation period for day be individual, that having a prep period that it happens to be scheduled at the same time as a colleague does not make that a common prep planning period. That is 2 concurrent individual prep periods. And then adding in 1 common planning period as a separate scheduled period by department per 5-day cycle, so once a week in a normal week. Under the paragraph of professional learning communities, we would propose clarifying that the duties be assigned 1 per day, either PLC or duty. Each 5-day schedule would be, sorry, I missed a word there. Would be up to 2 PLC periods, meeting periods, up to 1 department meeting, up to 2 duty periods.
If I could just interject, that is what's happening.
Yes, the current
So
schedule.
that's the new, there's a memorandum of understanding to accommodate this as we change our schedule. So this just memorializes it. Prior to it, there was.
When was the memorandum of understanding?
James and I signed it when we started this, was going on 2 weeks ago. Beginning of last school year.
Yeah, no, this 2023.
Rachel, are you talking about this, like, number, starting where exactly?
So if you see what's where it says teachers will participate in professional learning communities,
That's a,
and then that cycle, that's what's currently happening. If you look in the current CBA, it has a 7-day cycle.
That's the language we strike right below it.
I see.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that helps.
Right there. So I just wanted to clarify that that is what's currently happening, and that's been happening with the memorandum of understanding
Okay.
that James, and I.
Since it was
Since
beginning
the
of
new-
this school year.
22.
23.
22.
Yeah.
It just needs to be memorialized. in the
Yep.
contract.
Yep.
So I'm sure you might have a similar proposal. Or it's fine. That's all right. Not a bad, kind of, but so yeah, then we'll strike the language that's no longer. So.
Number 2, we would insert D. I think that's the best place for it. Again, at O'Malley, this is the existing practice. I believe, right, Matt?
Yep.
Each educator team schedule will include a minimum of one team-directed common planning period per 6-day cycle, in addition to the duty-free preparation period time provided for in paragraph C above. So those meetings should be in addition to the teacher's necessary once-a-day prep period.
But this is common practice already.
Yes, correct. Here's where it gets a little more complicated, elementary schools. So we've discussed changing teachers to educators, so we reflected that in here. I may not have gotten all of them throughout this proposal, but I noticed those. So we would, again, for B, just memorialize existing practice. Educators have no cafeteria or playground duty at the elementary school levels. We already have a TA on the strike through of the redundancy in C, that's housekeeping. E. And similarly, making sure that it's prep periods. Regularly, educators will have a daily preparation period of no less than 40 duty-free minutes. Except in unforeseen or unusual circumstances. Teachers will accompany students to and from specialists, inserting this, provided the principal has provided time for said transition, so as not to infringe upon the educator's preparation time. So when your prep period begins at the elementary level, you often need to take students to another location, to art, music, phys ed. If that's part of the 40 minutes, it's not preparation time. You're still in charge of students, and teachers need that time to be able to do the work that's required of them on their prep. And so the prep time should be equal. Teachers at the middle high school level are getting at least 40 minutes. Teachers at the elementary should get the same. And that time should be as one arbitrator once put it in a decision. Prep time is sacrosanct. Get the name of the arbitrator, but that was a prep time issue in Haverhill probably 10 years ago. And so we'd like it to be sacrosanct. Gloucester as well, so that educators get the work they need, have time to do the work that needs to be done. Letter E, we would delete some of the language that is no longer in effect because these were specific to the 17-18 and 18-19 school years. And clarify the first paragraph that says the 20 hours required by section A3 of this article shall be scheduled in the elementary school as follows. And then inserting new language, deleting the rest, inserting up to 10 hours shall be for staff meetings planned by the administration. Up to 5 hours shall be for professional learning community meetings. Each educator will be assigned to a professional learning community. Discrepancy in terms there, apologies. To be used, among other things, for collaborative school-based work on improving teaching and learning and the assessment, recording, and reporting of student achievement. The specific use of this time shall be directed by management. PLC meetings shall not exceed 1 hour in length. And then up to 5 hours shall be for grade level common planning time. The specific use of this time shall be directed by the members of each grade level team. Specialists and other related service providers shall attend each grade level team's common planning time on a rotating basis. So of the 20 hours that all other educators in Gloucester at middle and high school have to do outside of the regular school day, you would have equity there going to the same 20 hours. 10 hours once a month for staff meetings, and then the other 10 hours, management gets, the other 5 hours, the employees get for their common planning.
Anthony, can I just chime in? I
Please.
just want the community to know that's a huge hot button, a hot topic for the elementary teachers. We really would like fairness across the contract, and that's something that has been an ongoing issue. And like I said, a big hot button at the elementary level. So just so you know.
Well said, well said.
I know we're not asking questions, but I can just ask one very so I can understand this. It's the 20 hours over what period?
Across the school year.
School year.
And then finally, for tonight, union rights, which have sort of been a topic of contention lately between the workers of the district and the administration, not necessarily members of the school committee. So we would like to propose some language to strengthen those existing rights and also to update this article with new language that reflects the Freedom to Join Act, which is a new state law from 2018 or 19, I believe, specifically to provide union rights here in Massachusetts to workers. So Article 10, Section G to 26 into the union rights and amend as follows. First, we would strike the part that says the union president only gets a 60% workload if they work at the high school. Again, any member of the association has the right to run and serve as president of Foster Teachers Association. And the benefit that the committee agreed to for the reduced workload, which is mutually beneficial, so that the president can meet with the administration during the workday to resolve issues at the lowest level possible, should not be restricted only to high school employees. That's any member who runs from any school should be entitled to the same benefit. Second, move Article 16, use of facilities as a subsection to 26, union rights, and amend Section B as follows. So again, the sentence that starts with said bulletin board will be so placed only upon request of the association, and just end it there. Again, 5A does not allow for the union, for the principal to require that they be notified when union communications are posted on the union bulletin board. And so that should be struck as a matter of basic fairness to the union. Move Article 18A2 to 26, union rights, and amend as follows. That association representatives shall be allowed, not may, shall be allowed to attend the Mass Teachers Association and or NEA Association conferences and conventions with prior notice to the superintendent. And the delegates are finite based on the size of the unit, and they don't fluctuate very much from year to year. How many delegates do you have this year? 7. So
You've had
for,
7 minutes, one second.
yeah, so for MTA annual, sorry,
There's one per quarter.
somewhere around there, yeah. That's that sound problem. So again, I think it's a simple sign of respect to the equal party here at the table that the elected delegates can attend MTA, NEA conferences and conventions with prior notice. 26, amend as follows. So in Section A, we insert a new paragraph that the employer shall provide new employees as part of their onboarding paperwork process, a membership enrollment and dues deduction form as provided by the union. Should any new employees have a question about the form, the employer shall direct the employee to the president of the association or designee. The employer shall forward the forms to the union as soon as reasonably possible. We propose striking language regarding to the timeline of changing dues deductions as people come and go in the middle of the year. I don't know how this is really able to be followed. We propose striking that section there. The next strike, committee will notify the association of any terminations or withdrawals from said list, and another supplementary list will be submitted to the committee only after the deductions on the current list have been completed. Again, the dues list is really the union's prerogative. And so we don't necessarily need all of that, but we would insert the association will provide the employer with additions or deletions to the dues deduction list. When new members join the union during the school year, said notice shall include the total amount of dues to be withheld and dispersed to the association over the remaining pay periods in the existing deduction schedule. So that insertion replaces all of the deletions just above it. In Section B, inserting to the first sentence, so it reads that the committee shall provide the following information about new hires to the association no later than 10 calendar days after the new employee's hire date. Including name, work location, work phone number, program, job title / assignment. And this is in the Freedom to Join Act. That is mandated by the law. That is, has to be done. So we would insert that language to clarify this article.
That's exact, those exact.
Yes, that list of information and the 10-day notice requirement. In fact, the law, which we're actually providing something that would be less burdensome than the law coming up in Section C. The law requires an union orientation within that same 10 days of being hired. So as you see further down, Section C, the sentence we're striking on the first paragraph is redundant to the above. But in section C, for bargaining unit employees hired before the start of the academic year, the union shall be provided at least 1 hour to orient new members of the district. Employer shall provide release time for new employees to attend with no loss of pay, and the employer shall release 2 members of the union to conduct the orientation with no loss of pay. After the commencement of the academic year, the employer shall schedule and conduct 1 new employee orientation per month, starting in October for any new employee hired. The employer shall provide 30 minutes during this monthly new employee orientation as scheduled by the employer. Up to 1 representative as designated by the union shall be released with pay to orient employees during any union orientation. So that is, we could, our offer to negotiate, rather than having a union member released multiple times a week or a month because new hires are coming in throughout the month. Scheduling 1 a month, here's the orientation day, it could be during the day. Union gets people released to go, the new employees go and hear from the union. And we're meeting the minimum requirements of the law because we've negotiated something different that is mutually beneficial.
And those 30 minutes would be 30 minutes for the union orientation.
Correct, yep, 30 minutes, union orientation, no management. Just an opportunity to say hello, invite people to.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah,
I know. Are new hires required to be members of the union?
No, but the law gives us access to all new employees so that we can invite them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just didn't know. I know there are some workplaces where you're required to be a member of collective bargaining, but
So
that's not the case here.
So the Freedom to Join Act, the reason why Massachusetts law gives us this right to have access to members in the workplace during the workday, again, something that's currently a subject of dispute between both GAPE and GTA and the administration. We have an investigation conference on that issue scheduled for the first week of next month. But that 30 minutes, the right to access to the building and the Freedom to Join Act comes because the Janus decision made it illegal for us to have in the public sector what's called a closed shop. So other private sector unions can still say you have to be a union member in order to even have this job. We don't have that right anymore. But when the Supreme Court took that right away from us, Massachusetts passed a law specifically to allow the union and their representatives access during the workday in the workplace to their employees.
Right, no, I get it.
So we can invite them to join because we don't have that. ability.
Right, but they're not required by law to join if they choose.
No, the
Okay.
prohibited practice for us to coerce them into joining, but we have the right to
Speak
make
your
our
own-
pitch.
Right, sure.
Thank you for walking us through that. Probably like the caucus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be back in about 2 hours.
Let us know if you need more. Well, I get you.
Yeah, you can take mine if you don't mind that I wrote the date on it.
Well, we know it didn't copy.
I go after, right?
Is that right?
Yeah, it looks like it's working. All set, Bill.
I think you just need to turn that on if we want to see what the public is seeing right behind you.
TV.
See the,
I think the screen looks asleep. TV turned off?
yep,
Maybe it's not connected.
that way Bill can see my blind spot and stuff. Also, if he wants to. Where it's really double crowns that.
I was thin until I looked at that.
Oh, the worst, it's the worst.
Set. All set?
All set.
First of all, we want to thank you for the proposal tonight on thorough, and there's a lot to in there. We also wanted to voice our statement that your safety, the safety of the students is also important to the school committee, obviously, you know, that goes without saying. Not a day that goes by that we're not concerned about student safety, about your safety, and how that plays out in the classroom. So don't leave here tonight, don't leave any meeting with the school committee thinking that that's not important, because it isn't important. So I want to let you know that right off the bat. We did have some questions. I think what we're going to try to do tonight is, because there's a lot of operational and managerial type concerns and constraints around this, we probably need to spike my bold
Earlier
statement.
statement.
He was actually right on.
We could manage just fine without the superintendent. Maybe it would be best if we at least spoke to some of these. So, but we did think, well, let's at least get through a section and see if we can ask some questions about that. And so we thought maybe we would go into section C.
A few questions, they're not, I think it's all my questions, but I just wanted to start with some. So on page 2, number 3. It says provide ongoing training and professional development and training on behavior management to offset regulation. So, I mean, I'm also on the team, as you know, so I mean, more and more PD on these issues have been like a top priority for us throughout. And I believe that in the PD that goes to the teachers, there is also staff training on some of these behavior techniques, on dysregulation techniques. I don't know if I know all the language correctly. So I'm just trying to understand. So do you have this already? Is it that you want more of it? Is it that you want these particular topics to be required topics? Like I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, it's that this would be part of the regular training that everybody gets, like we do, you do the Alice training now, right? So this would say that this is a permanent part of the back to school routine, and new staff are gonna get the training that they need. We're gonna,
I don't feel like we have it.
Okay, so
Okay,
so that's my question.
that's-
Thank you. So in the professional development that's offered next one side of
I just want to be more specific, what training? What's the top, what, I know we've had speakers in for anxiety, and I know they've done some professional development as well. So I know there are definitely certain specific important current, challenges. So what else, what topics?
The whole social emotional regulation piece. I mean, we don't have. I mean, I've been teaching for a long time, so I may have it, but
right.
I could use more myself. Like, we have more intense needs coming every single year. And we don't necessarily have the training.
So there's also a difference between doing a lecture, which is what we often get as a speaker, and doing training.
Right. And again, I know this is coming from the other side of my brain that's been thinking about this a lot, but the sort of hands-on for lack of a better word, training on what to do when a student is escalating, what to do when a student is dysregulated, which I know, I mean, every day in every way. You're not getting that.
Can you just differentiate, when you say hands-on, are you just
That's
meaning
a-
practicality,
I
not
mean,
physical
no, not
management,
physical,
or, okay,
not
gotcha.
physical.
Cause that's a specific, training.
But here's a question.
Yeah.
Just, so I mean, just hands-on, but not physically hands-on. So practical, thank you, that's a better word. So do you feel like you don't get practical training in how to manage those issues?
I think what I would recommend, or the way I'm conceptualizing it, is, like, you can get some amazing PE from like Jessica Minahan, who's like, I'm sure the behavior coach, she's brilliant, but I get that training, right? And this is stuff I learned in grad school. Right now, we have like all our counseling staff have like weekly consultations, but that then causes me to write a behavior plan and give it to her who's had no training. What if instead of, for these people to come and get PD, I think this language says, this is for the staff to learn, not always going through the counselors who, this is our, it almost becomes redundant PD for us. And we have these brilliant minds coming in who, like Jessica Minahan is brilliant because she teaches practical strategies. Cut to the chase. Her big thing is don't have kids go for a walk because it just stresses them out more. Like this is what you do in the classroom to assist them. So I think what I like about this language is it just recognizes that this is a staff-wide need, and I think we fall into the trap of saying, oh, you know, we paid Lynn Lyons a bunch of money, and she did an excellent presentation on anxiety for the counseling staff, right? When really, the people who need the training are the people at ground zero in the classroom.
So this is exactly the question I'm asking, so thank you. So here's just a question from my observations when I'm a volunteer in the schools as a parent. Like I do know, so that's at the elementary level, which is different. Like there are teachers who I have observed who know how to say, hold a child. In a,
Which safety trainings.
not restraining,
Or just safety
just,
Like a compassionate
like
hold or.
a hold that
Putting the pressure.
it's like a child who was, I mean, it was during a backyard growers thing, a kid who didn't like bugs, okay? Was sort of freaking out about bugs. And this teacher knew how to just hold this child physically
Yep.
to just keep them calm. I mean, it was so beautiful to watch.
So I think, yes, but, adult with child, that we all see that empathetically. Mr. Lewis has a dysregulated 16-year-old girl in his class. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Right, no.
So we have to figure out, so what I think though is elementary school teachers, bless them, are empathetic and they're natural and kind of, I won't say maternal, but you know, they have that inclination on how to be nurturing, but nurturing looks different when you're in a classroom with like teenage stuff.
I was not saying that was instead of, I was using that as like an example of more of like, of how one tool.
I think what maybe we're trying to say is that it will increase the repertoire of
Right,
skills
Of all
that of all teachers based on their population.
right.
Well, I also think you're speaking intuition, right? That's a very intuitive.
I don't know, I have
response.
no idea.
Well,
what-
no, they're just human being wise, right? Outside of this world,
She was probably trained.
it's intuitive to do that versus being trained in specific strategies on how to recognize
Right.
it and.
But just to understand, I wasn't making a play for.
No, not a, this
I was
is
just
a
saying
real
that.
conversation.
Yeah,
But I think you also have to keep in mind the challenges. We could have up to 8 or 9 dysregulated kids. And that, no matter how well trained
It's
you are,
always at the same
it can be a little overwhelming. So we need strategies even, what do we do then?
right, no, 100%. I'm just,
And I think just speaking from conversations we've had with members, you know, we still have buildings that have been told this entire year from administration in their building, hey, you're gonna get these certain trainings, and it hasn't happened. So
okay,
there needs to be some sort of accountability on contractually, make sure, hey, if we're asking for this and we've determined that it's something that's needed, it has to be followed through, because we have members coming to us every day saying, we were told in November, December, October, and the rest of the 12 months. Hey, you're gonna get this training, and now we're in April, almost at the end of the year, almost at spring break. And it still hasn't happened, and that's one of the frustrations, a common frustration we've heard from our membership.
okay, this is very helpful, because I was under the impression some of this was.
So, and I think to get back to what Dan was saying, like, not everybody needs all of the training, right? Certain roles, they're like with safety care. There's a hands-on portion for people who would be doing that work. But the regular classroom teacher does not need necessarily the restraint training. There's a lower level where it's de-escalation and sort of preventative
Right.
before, hopefully, to alleviate the need for someone who would come in and do some kind of hold. So the contract currently has a professional development committee that would continue to work as it does now to decide, plan who needs what and kind of work within the existing systems. And this proposal would just say that this is part of the regular ongoing annual training so that everybody is not only getting the training, initial training they need, but those who've received it in the past get the refreshers, even safety care, there's research, all these different programs. So even if it's a homegrown professional development based on strategies that have been developed by the district and the union together through our number one committee, right, that could all be determined in the same way.
And in the same line, the way that, you think this is important, and the way, just to find that, think this is important. If we put it in the contract, then it's memorialized as being important.
Yeah.
And then if at some point, dysregulation or whatever decreases in the children, then we can decide that's important, and that could be.
Right, no, I understand.
I do too, yeah.
Just to kind of dovetail into that, or I guess a follow-up question. Page 1C. Develop mutually agreed upon district-wide staff reporting system and protocols regarding classroom safety issues, including but not limited to. Walk me through what that looks like now. Do you have, I mean, is stuff document, what's the documentation trail?
So, the hope, that is a great question. The hope is that there is some sort of system in each school where, let's say Jane had a moment in class today, in my classroom, where she cursed at another student, and we know that this has
The
been.
made up name, right?
Yes, correct, absolutely.
My dad.
Jane Doe.
There you go. So there's this issue, and at O'Malley, we have a online form to report it. We do not have access always on the back ends to see what was the outcome. Sure, I might be able to speak with Jane in class, hey, this happened today, let me know what was going on, let's work on this together. Her and I could build strategies. But what we're noticing, especially in post-COVID world, these dysregulations are happening more and more frequently, and we feel like we keep communicating, hey, here's what we've been doing, here's what we've tried, here's what we've discussed with this student. And then there's some breakdown in the middle of, okay, what has admin done to address this as well? So while yes, there's like a form I can put in for any issues I might have. The follow-up, the response to closure is what's missing.
It's not a closed loop. So for example, those reports then go through our like June seminar, for example, he does our PACE program. So he'll look at the data, bring that to our student support team. We'll say, wow, October-X is really cranking out on the profanity this week. We're gonna address it. But that doesn't ever get back to the teachers. So they have a kid who's regularly leaving the classroom, and there's no resolution as to what are we doing different? How can we help support this kid? So like the conversations are happening, the systems aren't there. What we need is something that is a complete circle so that the staff know what they're working with, how to help that student. And we're letting them know, hey, we got the message, and we're actually looking at this in many places this student is struggling. And then we can prepare for the next year to say, hey, we noticed that it only happens during social studies. Maybe that's something.
We also heard in negotiations that some of this is done during email, right? So I email and say, Joe Smith had an issue today, and I email that to the principal, and the email comes back to me, and then the email goes over to a different teacher. So we don't know if the data is being collected and shared with all the teachers, because it's only me, the principal, me, and this person, me, and that person, and it's not being kept somewhere, to say, you know, we've had 75 instances of this month.
I'll also add before you go real quick, if there's like a centralized universal reporting feedback loop. A lot of times when you have situations that do require more extreme, measures to try to make sure the students have the free appropriate public education they're entitled to, and that's in the least restrictive environment. Sometimes, despite all of the best efforts, that means an out of district placement, but before you can sort of go down that road, we have to do the response to intervention path. We have to show that we tried using the tools that. Because it's all an email, even when we have those emails, oftentimes it's at the end when, oh, we're trying to finally do something, but now every educator that's interacted with the student has to go back and refine the emails of all the things they've already documented with the employer so that they can back up the paperwork they need. Whereas if there was this very clear universal system that somebody just runs a report, Johnny's report, Jane Doe's report, and then that shows, okay, there was this issue, here was the intervention. Right, that works with engagement issues as well as it does with academic.
So we had a system called PBIS.
Okay.
PBIS,
Yeah.
it did collect the data, but that's all it did. The system was supposed to do more, it did not work. Actually, flat out failed. But it collected the data, but the communication, it didn't help with, the follow through, it didn't help with. The application of helping the students, it did not help with. It collected the data, but everything
It was
else.
labor intensive as well.
Everything
It was
else
labor
fell apart.
intensive and took time away from the students.
Yes.
Nobody wants that.
So, just, this is really important, this is a privacy question. So once you put something into that system, right? I don't know, you probably know more about, like, you know, if a student's having issues with this many teachers. I know the adjustment counselors or the school psychologists, they know about it, but is that information that does go back to all teachers?
So
Yes.
a lot of it's protected information.
Right, a lot of.
And this is one of the things is why we gotta get this nuance, Michael Joyce will probably be involved in it.
To be honest, it kind of held us up a
But-
little going through.
Here's the thing about that though, is like, I, like with this team here, will reach out to them and say, student X, handle with care today. Which is just a
Right,
way of them
yeah.
knowing that
Something.
if something's happening and handle with care, and then we can write a plan that gives strategies on how to handle the care with that student. Some kids, it might be set firm expectations, no walks to the bathroom. Another kid would be walks or a regulation break, and that's what's gonna help de-escalate this student. So, but we have to be very mindful about that piece. So for example, right now we have the behavioral health dashboard. I'm very proud that our community's rolled out because it's been really good for us as counselors. It's DCF engagement across schools. So we know, are there families that are struggling that we didn't know about? How do we support a collected family? If a kid's coming to me for the first time at O'Malley, I can see that, oh, we have frequent hospitalizations. That's important. But that's information I get to have that I obviously cannot share with my
Right.
teachers.
Right.
But we can distill it to what is appropriate information, but we need a system with which we can do that.
Okay.
And that goes to number 4 and 5, where these details are shared to the extent allowable by law in our proposal, so that what can't be shared won't. But to Dan's point, there are things that people absolutely need to know, because every person here, if I ask would raise their hand, would say that there were days when a student was having an issue and then somebody said, well, did you follow their plan? Did you know the plan? They're like, there was a plan. He's been on a plan for 4 days and nobody knew because it wasn't communicated over and over sensitivity. Like, I need to know, he can't go to the bathroom by himself.
When you say plan, you mean like a social emotional plan, you don't mean the IEP.
Or behavioral.
No, the
And
IEP
behavioral
specific to this, the
It's separate.
So this is a systems question, it
Yes.
sounds to me, like,
And I'd
right?
like to make another point on
And
the
also-
importance of this system, so if I'll go quick.
No, it's okay.
I've had the unfortunate experience of being in many an IEP contested meeting, there's a lawyer, there's an advocate, and the question comes up, because they're pushing on us hard, well, what did you do? Oh, we've done everything, right? Is that an answer that you guys want to hear? No. You want to know that we did everything, but if I'm going through, well, I have a personal system where I tracked, I did this, and then the AP has this system and they have that. We end up losing those cases and kids are going out of district who we can absolutely support here. We just don't have that good data that says, here's the print of information, here's how we've communicated. And then we give that to their lawyer and the advocate and say, yeah, we're doing what we need to for this child. And it's no different than what you're gonna get out of district. Here it is in a nice little package. We lose those cases because we don't have a systematic approach to letting them know these are our challenges. Because we all at this table share the same goal, right? Our kids need to stay in Gloucester. Being on an 1.5-hour bus ride for an emotionally challenged kid is a nightmare. You're not in your community, you're not connected. We need to keep them here. And these are these subtle little things that we don't talk about enough that help that process.
And that kind of goes to what we talked about with some of our proposals. They need a place to go to be able to regulate. And they need staff there to help them do that. And we can't always do that because we're in the middle of teaching.
And the staff needs to recognize when they're ready to learn and when they've shut down and when, when they're just a little bit outside of their comfort zone or when they've really had a bad day. If we have a reporting system, it will go to all the specialists. So maybe they get regulated in art, but not in ELA. So if everybody knows and everybody's on the same page, then they can give this child the type of environment and skill set and coping skills to grow and work at it. But if they're punitive, if they're just being restrained or someplace, they're not getting that enriched life skill, coping skills that they need with,
The goal's always so that they're ready to learn.
yes, they need to be ready to learn, to be in the classroom. And if
Just
they're not,
so really quickly being mindful of time as it is 6:54 and we end at 7. This is great discussion, but we're anticipating providing any proposals this evening.
We are not. We're not ready to do that. Okay.
I have a question in terms of, what do tell me what, a description of verbal abuses. So you're asking. I didn't say example.
It's one of those things you know it when you see it.
No, I guess that's the, think with subjective aspect of some of these things that this could cause, right? One person may find this offensive, one person may not, or, I mean, you're asking for this to be in a contract. And we need to be very clear that everybody has similar definitions, descriptions.
that's good.
But not real life examples.
But not real life.
That's one thing the PBIS did have. They had a graduated developmental scale.
On the
of
form.
behaviors.
On the form
On the
itself.
form- Well, I don't know.
So there's a difference between somebody uttering a swear word versus a directed swear.
Yeah.
Correct.
Or
Yeah,
threat
so you don't have
versus
to answer that, that's just one of
being
those
uncomfortable.
things in this that's vague,
Yeah,
that could be vague,
Sure.
and we would never want it to be vague.
So the first paragraph is a preamble to the actual language of what would be implemented, right? And so, it presumes, and we presume that we agree that threats and violence should have no place in the classroom. And I think there's all kinds of verbal abuse that, again, as these things are reported and going through their system, it may be that, oh, the student wasn't abusive, he was having a bad day, right? But then there are other times where some of the things that students can say can be pretty harsh, or even like direct threats, unfortunately. And so we just wanted language that sort of encompassed all possibilities, but knowing that the specifics would be done through the committee, the meetings and the discussions under number 1. To put these policies in ways to discern the difference between an outburst versus a verbal assault.
Another thing too, Kathy, is that if a child is verbally abusing the teacher might just shrug it off, but it upsets every other child in the room. So it's more that it's the audience as well. It's not just that one person that they're talking to, it's everyone that's around them.
But I think it's worth going back to that proposal of having a student support that's staffed, because some of those staff can go into the classroom.
Right.
And they can prevent some of this dysregulation for these kids. You gotta get ahead of them and just give them the support they need so that they don't get dysregulated. Does that make sense?
And who know the students, so they can say, hey, you're going into art now, it's going to be a little loud, or you're going to be doing this today, somebody to do that for them.
We want to set them up.
And that's important when we mention the adequate staffing for that, which just gives us some concerns looking at our current budgetary. Issues right there, where many of the educators in this room today do not feel like we're adequately staffed at the moment. And then the loss of any educator, let alone the number that's being proposed, it's not only alarming to us, but we're just really hopeful that we'll be pushing much harder to work with city council to get that level of funded budget, because there's no way.
Need-based budget.
There's no, right, the needs based, but there's no way we're going to be able to improve our student growth. There's no way we're going to. Students and some of our schools that are currently flagged with fewer educators, class sizes will get larger, and it'll be more and more difficult to appropriately educate those students and to make sure that those students have access, equal access to the curriculum. So it's really something, there's a lot of additional staffing that's mentioned in here that is critical, crucial, vital.
We
to
know
us.
we have added a lot of very important positions, skills, right? As we've built out a lot of social emotional support.
We hear you, I mean.
Absolutely.
We hear you, and we are.
We're doing,
We're actually
also-
pushing quite a bit,
Might wanna say
but
that.
we welcome your pushing too.
Right, that's exactly what you know. That the pressure point is to push in the city council. Or mayor or whoever you wanna. We would like if we could all push in the same direction. So if you could think of ways that we can also be involved in that process, because we know that this document is the document that's gonna set up the district for success. But it's not gonna, there's going to be no success if we're cutting educators and cutting back programs to the bare bones and even having to not put in programs that are really vital. So we're on the same team when it comes to that, it seems like, so.
I think so, and I think, I would just say, so we, I mean, this, not just the people sitting at this table, but the school committee are working behind the scenes and soon to be in front of the scenes to try to work on this. And, you know, you guys both through personal relationships, because this is Gloucester, and you know, your letter to the editor writing possibilities or whatever, I mean, we are going, I mean, I would say this is an all hands on deck moment for our budget. And we feel that deeply, and I don't know that we can work, we can be, I would really welcome pushing in the same direction. For the same goal of funding our schools.
So if I could, and I really appreciate that, because I think we are all in agreement. The best thing that you as the school committee can do so that we can help you is to pass the budget in that we actually need. So even
that's what
though.
we're advocating.
So I understand, so, but what Superintendent Lummis put out last night is the 3.1 compromise with the mayor.
It wasn't a compromise. It was identifying the gap. You're putting a wrong word on it.
I'm not trying to misrepresent, I'm not trying to play a trick here on you. What I am hearing is that the budget that is on the table now does not do the full 6.1 gap. That's because the city has not been providing it's the right amount of chapter 70 increases, which the superintendent put in his own presentation. He and the mayor argued about it. I don't blame only Mayor Verga, Lathia Romero also did the same thing, and this has been a trend since the SOA was passed. But you can simply direct the superintendent or overrule him and
You're
say,
getting into
Yeah.
touchy stuff.
So,
no, but this is really important.
We know what we have to do. We have to advocate.
If I could finish, because I've been working on not interrupting you all, and we've had a great conversation. This has been really, really helpful. I think it's been really productive, so we can understand these proposals. But we would be remiss if we did not implore upon you to do exactly that. Pass a budget with a 6.1 or greater budget that has no cuts to any student-facing positions, that expands and increases services, that lowers class sizes, that provides what our students need. And when you pass that budget, that is the most critical first step. Because if you pass a budget that's anything less than what we all think Gloucester needs and deserves, there's no way to increase it. You can send it to city council and they can cut. They can also override the mayor only on the school committee budget. It's 3244,
Okay,
which
so.
We know.
We hear you and I appreciate that and we hear you. We are deeply up to our ears in the budget and it is the most, I mean, look, it's not the most important thing happening because we have students in school every day. So like that's the most important thing that's happening. But I promise everyone in this room that we are working hard every day on this budget and I appreciate working in the same direction. And I welcome you guys advocating as I know you will. And I can let you know that we are advocating. That's what it is again.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed that you guys are pretty good at is rallying the troops. They're coming together. I would write a letter to the Gloucester Times, but I'm known for the occasional spelling error, so.
we can proofread.
Yeah, you know what? We know some English teachers.
In all seriousness, yeah, just to kind of dovetail into what Laura said, we're working nightly on this. On a day that goes by that we're not involved in trying to convince people to fully fund our schools. Any help we can get in that direction certainly is appreciated.
All right, on that positive note.
Yeah.
Should we should add a third group, you know? Because we have two. We have April 29th and then May 21st.
Oh, what was that again?
April 29th.
Yeah.
And May 21st are the dates, 2 days we have, so we can.
We're going after May 20th. Is that right?
Yeah, because we didn't really have any availability between those unless anything changed.
I say first week in June,
Sure.
that give us enough time, I always worry about that.
After the 21st.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The first week.
I think by then, if everything's on the table at the next session, we should be able to be 2 weeks after that, one on the 21st of May.
That's.
Why should we-
Later. You guys know what to, right?
Are you looking?
So both Dan and I will be in DC the first week of June with the 8th graders.
That's together 10.
What the last week of school?
It's the last full week of school, yeah.
Yeah.
No, so why don't we pick one of those things?
Yeah. Monday?
Monday or Tuesday?
Mondays are easier because it's Saturday, but Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little more.
Can we say Monday? We should check with the superintendent, but let's say Monday.
Monday. the
Are there
10th.
any?
Wait, what date?
Monday.
It's
Yeah,
been
tentatively
10.
for the banquet. The third of the 10th.
I don't remember what the date was.
No, it wasn't the third. It's-
Oh, yeah,
it's
it's weird,
so it's
yeah.
the 10th.
No, I don't remember the
Is there
date.
any senior events going on?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
The graduation is the 9th,
Okay.
but I don't.
We can change it.
That's what I was saying. why you look
But
at-
the
Hold on, I got it,
the
hold on, I got it pulled up.
Can't be Wednesday.
Can't be Wednesday.
It is, the retirement banquet's June 10th if we have it. Sorry, let me text speak up.
What was
The retirement banquet's June 10th, so.
We could ask again.
What time is
From staff meeting.
What time is that big?
3:30.
3:30.
I mean, what's,
What about Tuesday? 11?
You said they like Saturday.
Well.
We could ask to.
Oh, well, our silent reps want to come too, so.
We don't have that.
that's.
Unless the manager
That would
can
be
cancel the
fine.
last
It's just
staff meeting.
49.
What about the
Right,
13th?
4:30 should work on the 11th.
13th, I.
Let's try the 11th, just because the day before the last day of school.
So-
I'd like to- Wait, so there's any?
No.
I don't think.
Don't have a staff meeting on.
I'll just-
What about the 11th?
What about the 11th?
Are you clear on the
Yeah,
11th?
I'm good.
So let's see, can we say the 11th?
Yeah, can we schedule the 11th?
Put it on the, yeah, let's-
4:30 for them for.
No, there's no staff meeting on that.
Thank you.
Same time?
so same time works. Yeah. Okay, 6:11, 4:30. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Had a chance to look at the TAs.
No worries.
We got a couple of days before.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
I mean, I think